Nightclub ban goes into quarantine as another surge of COVID-19 infections keeps Hong Kong on edge. New and improved bracelets to keep better track of those in quarantine. And New York authorities scramble to prevent a COVID-19 disaster in the Empire State. Good evening, everyone. The city recorded 43 more COVID-19 infections today, bringing the total number to 453. Authorities are planning to quarantine more than 120 band members and staff who worked in bars managed by the same company. Sharon Tang has that story.
Finally, a breakthrough in health authorities' investigation into the virus-hit Lan Kwai Fong band cluster. The Center for Health Protection found that the cluster is linked to a company which operates 4 bars scattered across Wan Chai, Lan Kwai Fong and Tsim Sha Tsui. Alarmingly, 9 bands belong to this group and performed there as well. With 3 more bar staff and 4 more band members confirmed with COVID-19, the total number of infections linked to this group of bars has risen to 16. That's a tenth of its total number of employees.
We obtained the list from the management of the 4 pubs and learned that there are some other bands who also played in the bars. We are seeing the staff as well as the band members being affected. And some of them also live together quite closely, because the company also provides some residence for them. So we consider that all the members of the band as well as the pub members, they may have quite significant close contact with each other. So we advise them to be quarantined for 14 days in the quarantine center.
4 more customers who visited these bars have also tested positive for the virus, including a 22-year-old female police officer. Among those who were confirmed with the virus today, a person who visited a bar on Pottinger Street, while another belongs to the Chengsha 1 industrial building cluster. Still, many of the newly diagnosed patients had traveled elsewhere. That includes 2 domestic helpers and 10 students studying abroad. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
After coming under fire for a bungled rollout, the government is now offering new versions of its quarantine tracking devices. As Jackie Lin tells us, authorities hope the new gadgets are better than the previous ones.
After multiple reports of glitches, a new batch of electronic wristbands with built-in Bluetooth function was released. Authorities were seen helping travelers strap on the device and install the accompanying app.
There are some people who guide you, so it's not really a complicated system. It's very straightforward, and then it's the system about the apps I think is pretty secure and safe.
They were quite thorough and very hands-on in their sharing of the knowledge on how to do it properly.
While most returning from Singapore found the whole process efficient, those coming from higher risk areas like the UK spent 2 hours during immigration clearance.
After 12 hours of the flight, then we have to go through those procedures of being quarantined, etc. So I think the whole process is very stressful.
He said instructions on how to use the new bracelet were also insufficient.
I think it's not so clear because they just mentioned it quite briefly, and then we need to go home and then to do everything by ourselves.
The government said new hotlines, email and text messaging services have been set up to troubleshoot problems arisen from the wristbands. Travelers returning from higher-risk areas need to undergo tests for COVID-19. They can either do it at the testing center in Asia World Expo right after arrival or at home the next morning. With all foreigners banned from entering Hong Kong since Wednesday, tourist numbers have plummeted. While official figures show the airport remains the busiest entryway among the 3 border crossings still open, 96% of inbound travelers are Hong Kongers. Meanwhile, tourists from the mainland and other regions fell by more than 90% and 80% respectively compared with the day before. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
A group of airport retailers have placed advertisements in a newspaper pressing for more financial relief from the government. In a full-page ad, they're urging the airport authority to understand their woes in light of the entry bans. According to the ad, airport retail faces big financial difficulties, with some shops seeing a daily income of less than $1,000. In response, the airport authority waived the lease payment to all its tenants and restaurants for 2 weeks. That's on top of a 4-month rental concession announced earlier that slashed rents by 50 to 70%. Hong Kong's Philippine Consulate General is urging all Filipinos working in the city to stay at home when possible. The advice comes as 6 more Hong Kong-based Filipinos tested positive for the coronavirus. Dong Yao with that story.
Traditional gatherings of Filipinos is part of Hong Kong's unique cultural landscape. But the meetups now pose concerns due to the spread of COVID-19 in the community. Today, the Philippine Consulate General announced another 6 Hong Kong-based Filipinos contracted the virus, bringing the total infections in this group to 13. The Bureau's Hong Kong office also urged all Filipinos to stay at home whenever possible and keep up their social distancing. Filipino domestic helpers expressed their worry over the epidemic and say they will follow the instructions of their employers.
A bit worried, ma'am, because we're here, ma'am, we're here to work, ma'am, but because some, ma'am, they don't follow their employer not to go out, ma'am. They give their risk for their health and their employer also, ma'am.
Teresa Liu, chairwoman of the Association of Hong Kong Manpower Agencies, suggests employers offer reimbursement and be mindful of their helpers if they were stranded because of the epidemic.
Because they want to stay out and with their friends and have the gathering and eat together and stay together.
Philippine officials have promised to provide all necessary support to Filipinos infected with the virus in Hong Kong. For emergencies, they can call the consulate's hotline for help. Dong Yao, TVB News.
Well, people in the city of Xianing in Hubei province are facing unexpected hurdles as the lockdown ends there. Just hours after the borders reopened, residents and travelers who had been trapped there for months found out they had to take a rapid test for the virus. That led to long lines outside clinics and hospitals. The lifting of a lockdown on Hubei province is a major milestone in the fight against COVID-19 in China. Wuhan remains under lockdown until April 8th. Well, to the pandemic overseas now, and New York authorities are mobilizing to head off a public health disaster. The city has emerged as America's biggest coronavirus hotspot as U.S. deaths from the pandemic top 1,000. The coronavirus death toll in the United States is another grim milestone in a menacing global outbreak. With new public bans being introduced, New York State has become a warning flare for the rest of the country. In an ominous sign, Cuomo and the governors of North Carolina and Hawaii are preparing for the worst. Disaster officials say those states have requested special mortuary teams that can be deployed for mass casualties. The mayor of New York City says progress is being made on acquiring ventilators, but he blasted the Republican-controlled Senate for shafting the city in the $2 trillion stimulus bill.
Giving New York City $1 billion out of a $150 billion pool that they provided for the entire country, but we are 1/3 of the cases in this country right now. Someone do the math down there in Washington. They gave us less than 1% of the money that they were giving out to cities and states, and we have 1/3 of the cases in the nation. That is just immoral.
The total case count in New York City is nearing 18,000, with the death toll at 200. After last month's Mardi Gras celebrations, New Orleans is now on track to become the next U.S. epicenter. The city has recorded the world's highest growth rate in coronavirus cases. In Washington, President Donald Trump again pushed his goal of reopening the economy soon. The idea came from desperate business leaders, but the target of Easter is meant to appeal to evangelical Christians. And Trump doubled down on blaming the media for intentionally harming the economy.
The media would like to see me do poorly in the election. I think there are certain people that would like it to do financially poorly because they think that would be very good as far as defeating me at the polls.
Nationwide, nearly 68,000 people have been diagnosed with COVID-19. Only 2 other nations, China and Italy, have more cases. Well, after seeing more than 700 fatalities in a single day, Spain's parliament has approved extending a lockdown. Meanwhile, the number of new cases in Italy appears to be slowing, offering some hope. Leslie Tang has more.
During a mammoth session of debate, members of Spain's parliament took a moment to acknowledge the efforts of healthcare workers during a global crisis. In the early hours, Parliament approved an extension of Spain's state of emergency after its prime minister asked to extend the country's lockdown to mid-April. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said, "I'm convinced that effectively, the only efficient option against the virus is social isolation. Regardless of our political color, all of us are convinced about it." This comes as Spain lost more than 700 lives in a single day. It now has the second highest COVID-19 death toll in the world, topping 3,600. With another political figure affected, Spain's Deputy Prime Minister Carmen Calvo has tested positive for the virus after previously testing negative. In Italy, Europe's virus epicenter, healthcare facilities continue to be overwhelmed. Rooms of this newly are to be slowing, offering a glimmer of hope. The World Health Organization is calling for more precise and targeted measures to confront the virus.
Asking people to stay at home and shutting down population movement is buying time and reducing the pressure on health systems. But on their own, these measures will not extinguish epidemics.
Leslie Tang, TVB News.
Still ahead on tonight's news. Outcry over the use of arcane law to arrest a district council chairwoman. Market reaction mixed to massive U.S. economic rescue package. And New Zealand shooter pleads guilty to mass killings. Welcome back to TVB News. The chairwoman of the Central and Western District Council was arrested at her home early this morning. As Caleb Leung reports, Cheng Lai-King was arrested for making a seditious intention under a law dating back to colonial times.
After her arrest in the early morning, police released Cheng Lai-King at around 2 p.m. on a $10,000 bail. Cheng, the chairman of the Central and Western District Council, was arrested for allegedly doxing a police officer. She's believed to have posted online the personal information of the officer and his family members and called for an eye for an eye. The superintendent said the alleged violation comes under Chapter 200 of the Crimes Ordinance.
But I'm saying that it is a Section 9 and Section 10, which talks about seditious intent. We will examine as to which is the most appropriate one, and there are also other offences which include incitements or breach of contempt of court that we are considering.
However, Cheng's fellow Democratic Party member Ted Hui described the law as outdated and unconstitutional, calling the arrest politically motivated. The law was to regulate provocative and hate speech, which is for consolidating the Queen's power back in the days, Hui said. The police denied allegations of political intent and wouldn't rule out if more people will be arrested. Now let's take a look at what seditious intention actually is. Under Chapter 200 of the Crimes Ordinance, a seditious intention includes an intention to bring into hatred or contempt or to excite disaffection against the administration of justice in Hong Kong. An intention to promote feelings of ill will and enmity between different classes of the population of Hong Kong is also a violation. It should be noted that the section about seditious intention includes wording such as Her Majesty. However, the Interpretation and General Clauses Ordinance notes that any such reference can be construed as a reference to the SAR government. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
A new survey shows Hong Kongers' confidence in the economy has reached a new low. The Consumer Confidence Index in March dropped to 52.8%. That is the lowest since 2008's financial crisis. Among some 900 respondents, 72% feel pessimistic about Hong Kong's economic outcome in the long run. Lawmakers want the government to hand out its promised pandemic subsidies as soon as possible and consider bringing back factories to revive the local economy.
This time round, I think globally, people believe that the deployment of the supply chain would be changed. And I think the Hong Kong SAR government should get hold of this opportunity and make sure that Hong Kong get a chance to revitalize our industry by having, say, high-end product manufacturing business here.
The U.S. Senate unanimously passed a $2.2 trillion package aimed at helping workers in industries hurt by the coronavirus and getting much-needed medical equipment. But as Alan Booknia reports, there were mixed reactions on global stock markets.
Wall Street soared over 5% during the day of trading, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average settling at 21,200, a gain of 2.4%. It was the first day of back-to-back gains on Wall Street since the brutal sell-off that's seen the market down nearly 27% from its high set a month ago. But in Asia, stocks were mixed. Here in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index shed 0.7% to 23,352. In Tokyo, the Nikkei plunged 4.5%, and in Seoul, the Kospi lost about 1%, but Sydney added 2.3%.
Investors are still cautious. However, they are betting on that since the lockdowns in the Western world, or especially in the US and the EU countries, will have the same effects as the China lockdown 2 months ago. So even with the soaring cases, we believe in the next 2 or 3 weeks, the cases may be stabilizing. If that happens, then the worst might have been over for the financial markets or for the pandemic situation. So investors are betting on that right now.
The rescue package approved unanimously by the Senate includes money for hard-hit industries, direct payments of up to $3,000 apiece to millions of families, expanded unemployment aid, and at least $100 billion for hospital-related health systems. It still has to be passed by Congress, and U.S. President Donald Trump says once that's done, he'll sign it.
Without delay, I will sign it immediately. We will have a signing, and it'll be a great signing and a great day for the American worker and for American families, and frankly, for American companies.
The rescue package will become the biggest ever passed by Congress. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has postponed a nationwide vote on controversial proposed constitutional amendments that would allow him to seek another term in power. Putin didn't set a new date for the vote, which was originally set for April 22nd. He said it would depend on how the coronavirus pandemic develops. In a televised address to the nation, he also ordered people to stay at home next week unless they were working in essential sectors of the economy. The official number of corona cases in Russia is 658, an increase of 163 from Tuesday. Under the current law, Putin wouldn't be able to run for president again in 2024 because of term limits. A new measure would reset his term count, allowing him to run for 2 more 6-year terms if he chooses. An Australian white supremacist who killed 51 people in 2 New Zealand mosques a year ago entered a surprise guilty plea today. 29-year-old Brenton Harrison Tarrant pleaded guilty to 51 counts of murder, 40 counts of attempted murder, and 1 count of terrorism. The killing spree was the deadliest in New Zealand's modern history and prompted the government to rush through new laws banning most semi-automatic weapons. Tarrant had been scheduled to go on trial in June. A sentencing date has yet to be set. Tarrant is facing life in prison. The U.S. government has concluded that a retired FBI agent, Robert Levinson, who had vanished more than a decade ago, died while in custody in Iran. Levinson disappeared in March 2007 when he was scheduled to meet a source on the Iranian island of Kish. For years, U.S. officials would say only that Levinson was working independently on a private investigation. But an Associated Press investigation revealed that Levinson had been sent on a mission by CIA analysts who had no authority to run such an operation.
Please help me.
Good advice. That is our time for the news. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.